3. Well, hopefully everybody got to pray along with the Pope in the past hour. Thank you to a CMAX subscriber who let us know, hey, the Pope is going to be speaking. Maybe you should delay this broadcast. But now I've got James Gardner here with me, who is probably the oldest friend I have, who I still am in contact with. We've known each other since kindergarten.
Yes.
And is the music minister over at St. Nicholas Catholic Church in Virginia Beach.
Yeah, it's a great job. And also I'm Catholic now, largely because of Ashley. So,
that was a good first step to becoming a music minister.
Yes, indeed.
So we're going to be talking about what churches are doing right now, how community can still exist, especially from the perspective of, I'm sure, many of our music ministers and youth ministers who are becoming the de facto media ministers at churches, and how to actually live stream and do some of the things that we're being told to do.
Yeah.
But do you want to, I mean, you opened up the can of worms there. Do you want to give the 30-second your testimony?
Oh, gosh, yeah. So I grew up in the same homeschool co-op as Ashley. My family were evangelical Protestants, and really it was a beautiful kind of foundation to grow up in. But a lot of the world that I was in was very anti-Catholic. Never my parents so much, but just we heard all these terrible things about, Catholics believe in worshiping statues, or they think Mary's part of the Trinity. But I knew this wonderful Catholic family. I'm like, I don't think that's right. So over time, as I later in life really felt drawn to the Catholic Church, I kind of already knew that a lot of the falsehoods that I heard were just absurd. So I think it was in like 2005 I reached out to you.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
I will note that was after I had cold called 4 parishes and left messages saying I would like to become Catholic. Somebody called me back and nobody did. So answer your phones, parishes.
Yes, answer your phones, please. Your phones, your Facebook messages when people reach out. Yeah. But fast forward and here we are.
Yes, indeed.
So now with everything that's been happening the past few weeks, can you tell us a little bit about how things have been going with trying to figure out keeping community going, especially with choirs who have been preparing so hard for Triduum and for Easter celebrations, and with the parish in general?
Definitely. Well, as a music director, this is one of our busiest times of year normally. So now we're all at home. And even though it's a lot of work for the people who are in the choirs or they're instrumentalists, it's a big part of their life. It's part of their community. We rehearse every Monday and Thursday at my church, and all of us look forward to that. It's a really special time for us. And then it's really meaningful for us to be able to serve at Mass as musicians and know that we are helping people in their hearts to connect to the reality of what's happening sacramentally, that Christ is present. And so all of a sudden that, not only are we not able to be at Mass in person, but the way that we normally serve is no longer possible either. So that's as a music ministry. In general at St. Nicholas, that's really been across the board, is that loss of community, but also of our regular access to the sacraments. So at St. Nicholas, all of us on staff have really been working hard to maintain that community. Our DRE and our youth minister have really pioneered this initiative to reach out to all of our active parishioners and then get them reaching out to some of our less active parishioners, especially people who are vulnerable, whether they're elderly or we know they might be immunocompromised and they can't get out of the house. So we're doing everything we can to get to those people and make sure they still feel connected to the church, whether they need to be ministered to or if there's somebody that maybe needs something to do and it would be great for them to be the person making that phone call or, if possible, that visit, although, of course, that's not always possible now. As a music ministry, we have started to play around this idea of kind of being a virtual choir. So I pioneered it with one of my younger cantors who's very technologically adept, and she did an incredible job last week where I recorded tracks, I sent them to her, she put on headphones and recorded over them, sent it back to me, I compiled it together, and after that success, we're trying to do that with our entire choir now. And although it's not possible for us to do that at Mass because of the way the diocese wants us to do live streaming, we're still looking forward to being able to put together some videos and sound clips to put out to our parishioners to encourage them to maybe after the live streamed Mass to take a little time as a family and sing along with us and praise the Lord.
And it's great to do that still at the community level, both for your people participating, but also, for the parish community to hear the people that they know. It's different when it's people you know.
It is.
For our parish, for Christ the King, the internet is horrible in our parish building. So for now, we've actually been using this space to live stream out of. They're working at the parish on some solutions so that live streaming can happen out of there, which is part of the other thing to talk about today. But it's great, any of those things that can be done. And they're also doing like Zoom youth group hangout this Sunday.
Yeah,
so
we've been doing things like that as well.
Yeah, great ways to keep community going. So there has been this directive, at least in our diocese, live stream Mass. However possible, live stream Mass with keeping people safe, but still able to connect.
Right.
But as you know, as one of the more technologically advanced music directors, a lot of churches have a big gap in technology knowledge because generally, especially liturgically, sacramentally driven traditions, being present is very important. So we don't have as much live streaming set up already as a lot of our evangelical brothers and sisters who do this a lot, where it's still great to get together, but it's not as critical. So they have those things in place. So we've got a variety of things that might be lying around the parish closets or in parishioners' closets, since things are kind of hard to find, and thought we'd go through a little bit of the basics of what do you actually do to live stream. So there are two big issues that I see over and over with kind of home live streaming and home out of parish live streaming. The first is internet speed. With the technology that most people have between phones, tablets, laptops, going wireless generally works better in most parishes because you don't have access to a nearby Ethernet cable, and your best camera probably is on something that doesn't hook up to Ethernet. But you want to make sure, and I've got some stuff pulled up on my computer already, that you know what your internet speed is and you fix it if it's not there. So if you Google speed test, and it takes you to speedtest.net. I'm going to run a speed test right now. I can tell you in our office, we generally, we do a lot of live streaming out of here. Right. It's usually about 7 megabits a second that we're actually transmitting to sustain HD 1080 video. So I advise trying to be at 10 or higher where you are. See, now we're saying 3.75 megabits upload, probably because we're currently uploading. Yeah. So that's the available extra bandwidth. But you can do this from any device and test it. When I tested this earlier today, it was about 10. Megabits download is always faster with most.
Yeah.
We're all set up to be able to stream.
Yeah, and at St. Nicholas we get 20 upload, which is great. But yeah, most of the time with your ISP, unless you have set up something particularly to what you want, they're going to give you a higher download speed than upload speed, because that's usually what you're going to be using more.
Because we're watching videos and downloading stuff. And I know also in this room, actually, this could also be why I'm getting 3.75 here. We don't have an access point in this room. Our access points are in the hallway in our office, because we don't usually use the internet for much in this room. So like for us, we've got set up these guys, these access port points is what they're called, where they're not repeaters, so you don't have to use a different login. It takes your existing signal, and we actually have Ethernet cables run through our ceiling going to these around the office to make sure we can get decent speed. Some parishes might have those already. If you don't, and you don't have good internet speed in the vicinity where you'll be live streaming, you might want to try to either up your internet or also test actually taking whatever device you're going to use to live stream, taking it off the Wi-Fi at the parish and seeing what your speed is. Like I pay extra to Intellos to have higher speed to my phone. Right. You can also get, wireless hotspots that you purchase to use cellular data. Right now is probably not the time to start one of those, but you might have some parishioners who have those high-speed packages that are with their cellular. So if you do that, you have to make sure to go into your settings. Turn this so they can see, and turn off your Wi-Fi so that you're using cellular data, or else you're going to keep trying to use the parish Wi-Fi. And then you can, again, just like we did over here, run a speed test.
Yeah.
So that's the number one problem I see when people do home and parish, kind of amateur streaming, which there's nothing wrong with it. And we have some great cameras, but the number two problem is sound.
Yes.
Which I know you know well. So most of our churches have pretty decent sound equipment. They just don't have a way to get it streaming.
Right. And I think a particular issue with a live stream is that if you're using, a smartphone, iPhone or Android, the microphone on that is okay when you're close to the sound source. So if I'm setting up a camera 5 feet away from Father, it's not going to sound amazing, but no one at home is going to listen to it and notice that it's bad. But if you're trying to get a wider shot, say you were able to have a lectern and you want to be able to see the altar and the ambo and the lectern from 20 feet away, that same microphone on your iPhone not only is not going to sound great picking up Father, it'll be fairly muted, it's going to more and more pick up every little sound you hear in that space. And people will sit at home and notice that it's not good, to the point that you might get complaints from people that said, I couldn't hear Father.
Right, and that's the problem, is when it gets to be distracting. So we're not talking about producing films right now. We're talking about how do we help people pray.
Yes.
And when you can't hear Father and you hear the air conditioner, which also brings up the point, turn off your heat and air conditioning so they don't come on, because those sounds will get amplified. And if you have, like, in our parish, a holy water font that has a motor in it, turn off the motor so the pump isn't going, so that the water's not circulating while you live stream.
Anything that makes sound, and even things as simple as close all of the doors that go into your actual church, and put signs on them. Tell people not to come in while you're filming, just because the very first one that we filmed, one of the doors was open. Somebody walked by in the hallway with high heels on, and you heard Father praying, and then clomp, clomp, clomp. So,
great distraction.
Yeah.
Good point. So if you do, let's say you've got decent internet, right? And you've got a smartphone that has a decent camera and, an okay built-in microphone. You could do, like you said, and get, 5 feet away. Mm-hmm. But again, much more than that, you've got a problem. So some of the ways that we can hook up equipment at a parish, and I'm going to assume you have at least a decent microphone at any parish, at least one decent microphone. So you don't really need to go out and buy a microphone. Yeah. What you need to do is make sure you can connect the microphone to your camera.
Yes.
So I actually don't own one of these because I don't do this often, but of course, most of our newer iPhones use the Thunderbolt. Lightning cable, Thunderbolt's the big one over here, yes. Use Lightning. So you can't just plug in a headphone or a microphone. So they do make things like iRig is one of the big brands, but where you can hook up with your lightning cable. This one actually is not a lightning cable. This is for an older model, and these are going to be easier to find.
Yes.
For ones that are hooking up with the 3 lines on the 1/8-inch jack. That 3 lines means one signal is for your microphone, 2 are basically for your left and right headphones.
Stereo, yeah.
But you have to get basically a splitter, like B&H. Some of the companies that are not on Amazon, you're probably going to be more likely to find things you can still order. There's a lot of them. iRig's one of the big brands, and they hook up, lightning cable to your phone, and then from that you can hook up a microphone input and headphones. Headphones. Yes. Headphones. Wear them. Love them. Don't take them off. Yeah. I see, again, time and time again, and I'm sure you've seen this too. Yeah. People set up sound, and they're watching the camera, and the headphones come off, or they maybe even never put headphones on to begin with. Yeah.
Which is really critical, because when you wear the headphones, you are hearing what the person at home is going to hear, not what you're hearing in that space in that moment, which is not always the same thing. With the Lightning interface, that's great if you can have it. I actually already have something like that I can use at St. Nicholas. But for almost all of us working in parishes right now, we're not spending money because, of course, with this crisis, our offertory is not coming in at the same level. So we're looking for how can we, as good stewards of the church's resources, save as much as possible. So one thing that would be very helpful for people would be to know how can we do this without having to go out and buy a new thing, but with things that we may have, like you said, in a closet or on a sound cart, so that we're not having to spend money in a time when we're taking in less money and we're trying to avoid going into debt as a parish.
Exactly. So that's why we've got our cable nightmare back here we prepped before, and these are things that we just kind of scrounged around the studio to find that a lot of parishes might have, or if your parish doesn't, send the picture and an email out to your parishioners and see who has one sitting in their closet.
That's a great idea, both because it'll help us to get those things, but also I know so many of our parishioners, they really have a heart for serving, and they can't right now in a lot of the ways they usually would. So even a little thing, to them it'll mean a lot to know that they helped you to get where you needed to be. And I will mention, as Ashley was putting all of this together, I know that at my parish we have all of these things just sitting around anyway, and the last parish I worked for, I knew which closet they would be in. So I think most of you will have these items laying around.
All right, so let's go through our signal chain. So you start with, any microphone or off your soundboard, output off the soundboard, but most of them have very similar output. This is called an XLR output, right? So we go from our microphone through an XLR cable. Again, I do not know a single parish that would not have an XLR cable. Then this is something that most parishes have for hooking up guitars. It's called a direct input box, and it goes from 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch input to XLR. Now, the point of this normally is to take what's called unbalanced signal from the guitar and make it safer to go into your sound system with XLR. We're going to reverse it. Most of these go both ways. So it goes, signal can go either direction. So you can take your XLR cable and hook up your microphone or your output from your soundboard. Then over here, again, you probably have these cables lying around. You take, what we found here was actually an 1/8 inch cable. So this is used for like a headphone extension cable. This is one that actually might be a little bit less likely to be lying around, but somebody at home will have one.
Absolutely, yeah.
You use them a lot for hooking up home AV systems.
Yeah, or your phone to your car's audio system. Everybody has a few of these laying around somewhere.
Yes, somebody at home definitely does if your parish doesn't. And then a lot of headphones even come with these. It's the 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch adapter. So hook that up, plug it into your in and outs. Shouldn't matter which one. Now, this is the thing where you may actually be better off using an older phone or using a computer. Even though the camera is better in your newer device, you may not be able to get good sound. And really, the sound is far more critical than the visual.
Yeah, well, because when you think about that visual quality, even if you have a brand new smartphone that can capture 4K video, you're not going to be streaming at that level anyway. If you can hit, an older webcam can probably hit 720p, which, if you're not familiar with the jargon, is kind of an older HD TV. It looks really good. Yeah,
and it's fine for people. They need to see some visual and make sure your lights are turned on so you can see faces. But yeah, so then you take this 1/8 inch and plug it in, like you could plug it into the side of your computer, or of course I have a newer phone, so I don't have it, but the jack or that iRig adapter. Couple of other options that we're just scrounging around what cables do we have. I happen to have a direct cable that goes from XLR to 1/8 inch. That happened to be a cable that was just lying around that I had used for setting up studio monitor speakers. I also have a cable from hooking up the output from a microphone directly to 1/8 inch. I also happen to have a XLR to 1/4 inch, and then I could take a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch adapter and hook it up to my device. And then some parishes might have this. A lot of people at home might have this, and this might actually be ideal. It's a simple interface for a computer. You got your XLR that you hook up with a cable, a USB cable, and then you hook it up to your computer, and they're meant for using for recording. And you also have your headphone output here, which is very important to be able to listen again. Right. But that's where it might be better to use a computer that you can hook this stuff up to if you have any of those devices.
Yeah.
And you can find some combination of this and use the mics you have. Definitely. If you don't somehow find those, I would recommend looking at a direct cable manufacturer, since we have this kind of shortage with stores closed. I have always used Redco Audio to order cables. They're a lot cheaper, honestly. And we don't have any like affiliate deals with anybody. We're just talking about what resources we've used. But since they specialize in cables, they're more likely to have the inventory already.
Yeah. The other thing that you can check if you work in a church is check with the other parishes in your area. I know as a music director, I'm pretty good friends with quite a few other music directors in this area, and there's many more that I've at least met a couple of times, and I have their phone number, and I could pick up the phone and say, I'm trying to piece together Frankenstein's monster so I can get this good audio, and I'm missing this piece. Do you have one of those? And they might have 6 of them. And I'm sure that's the same is probably true for our youth ministers, our DREs. You know, network with your colleagues. They might be able to help you out on this, again, without having to place an order for something.
Right.
But if you can't, even in a crisis like this, we're trying not to spend money. If we can spend just a teeny little bit to make that quality better so that our parishioners can pray with us at home and still feel connected to the church and to the sacraments, that is worth it.
And I would, again, highly recommend don't spend your money on a new microphone. Look for the cable or spend $10 on a cable.
Yeah, we've all got good microphones. Yeah. Whether you're dealing with a more contemporary or a very, very traditional church, there's probably at least 1 or 2 really good microphones. It might be the one at your ambo. It might be the one your cantor uses. Some churches might have a dozen of them sitting around. But we've all got a couple of good microphones.
Yeah. And if you are going to do something that is more sound complex, like at Triduum, or if you have a deacon who can be assisting at Mass, I would really try to use the sound system you have for the church, but don't have the audio output going into the empty church. Turn off your main speakers, do output off your soundboard. Don't undo everything that so many people have worked on in your parishes to put together. Just turn off the final output to your main speakers and take output off the board.
Yeah, and part of the reason that's so important is when you have a small number of people in an empty church, it sounds different acoustically than when there are people in that church. People absorb sound waves because we're kind of soft and
soft and squishy.
Yeah, we're soft and squishy. Most of our churches aren't, and so the very first Mass I set up with our priest, Father June, I think he had a microphone on. We weren't even thinking about it. And as soon as he started talking, I was like, nope, because you could hear that echo. And not only does it not sound good, I think it's kind of a bummer for people because they're sitting at home, they're trying to tune into church, and the first thing they hear, maybe even subconsciously, tells them, Father's alone in there. And, it's just kind of, it sounds bad and it's a downer. So
we want to be uniting,
we
not
want to turn
distancing.
that off. But regardless of how it makes us feel when we hear that echo, just as a good sound practice, we don't want to have a big speaker in that space. We want to capture what's coming from that microphone. And, if you have a wireless microphone for Father and it's going into your soundboard, you can go out from your soundboard to this and pick that up. It's going to sound great. You can use all the sound setup you already have in place for this.
Just flip that last final switch that turns the main speakers off.
Yeah.
Now, once people have this set up, and we're not going to go over tripods, like tripods exist. Get them for whatever you're using, or if you're using a webcam, angle it. Yeah. Try to not move your camera around. It's usually a lot more distracting. If you're using one camera, leave it set where you'll be able to see if somebody's going to be at the ambo and the altar. Have it set in one place. Yeah. So that it's, not becoming a distraction with moving. There are some tools with, like Vimeo has a live studio, but you have to have their premium account. Right. Most of the things that have where you can do your own poor man's studio switching cost. There are a few apps out there, I'm sure, but I haven't played with them.
And you're talking about a multi-camera setup where we can have a camera closer in on Father and another one on the ambo, maybe another at the lectern, so we can kind of cut back and forth between a reader and our priest, and then a canter. That's great if you can do it, but like you said, you're talking about either equipment on site or some kind of a subscription service where you're spending more money.
Right.
So,
and the goal is not spend money, but to
Yeah.
just connect with people.
yeah. And so your recommendation then is if you're using a single camera and you want to capture all those things, to kind of pull it back to a wider angle so we can just see all of it to begin with.
You do a great job at translating what I say to make sure everyone can understand. Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of having, a camera right up, have it further back so that people can see everything you do.
Yeah.
Then to actually,
Well, what about is a different scenario? I mean, that's great if we're able to have a cantor in there, if we're able to have a couple of readers. What if it's just Father and a camera person? What do you recommend then as far as, should we be close in on Father and the altar? Should we back up a little bit? What do you think looks better?
I think it looks best to get just barely everywhere that Father is going to be. So if Father is going to still use the ambo, just barely have the ambo to make sure that when he's there, there's a little bit of space above his head, not too much, just a little bit, like you can see on the shot on me where my hand is out of frame. I'm assuming Kateri is on me right now as she's switching back there. But like right now, we are in a room alone. We have somebody switching and somebody monitoring the live stream, which is a lot of what the diocese has recommended. When we do Mass out of here, we have Father Dan, Deacon Daryl, and one camera person. We are able to do that multicam, but when you can't, do just barely enough to show a little bit of space so it doesn't feel claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But let people be intimate. Let them be close.
Yeah. I should mention with that, because here we're in the Diocese of Richmond. I'm sure most dioceses, if they haven't done this already, they probably are going to soon. Our diocese on their website, I think it's on the part for the Office of Worship, has actually put together guidelines for what they're calling best practices for live streaming. It's super, super helpful. It has some of what we're talking about, but they also offer some liturgical guidance, because for a lot of us who have experience in liturgy and we know what the church expects of us in properly carrying out a liturgy, we're kind of in some uncharted territory. We're doing things we haven't done before. And so, like I said, we're very fortunate that our diocese is giving us that, the guidance we need to know what to do, both liturgically, but also they're covering some of this technical stuff too. So, check your diocesan website and see if they've offered any guidance on that sort of stuff. Or if your diocese is maybe a little behind the curve, see what another diocese is doing as well, because they're thinking not only about the technology involved, but also, just making sure that we don't make any mistakes in terms of good liturgy.
Right, because we are still reverent to the sacraments.
Yeah.
Christ is still there in the real presence.
Exactly.
And this is not a show. This is our faith. This is our reality. And yes, we need to follow those regulations, not because they're crazy obstructions, but because there is a reason. And we need to follow our bishop's lead and our church's lead.
Definitely.
I know we need to wrap up soon, but I do want to make sure we go a little bit into the final step of actually setting up and live streaming. So when we are, oops, sorry, Kateri, I bumped the cable. So her signal's going to be messed up for a second. There we go. Okay. So what we did for CMAX, and I'm going to walk through that first. Maybe. There we go. That's what I get for bonking a cable. So we added just at the top of our homepage a link to where everything is for live streaming. My home parish, Christ the King, just has up on the homepage directly embedded this live stream, which again we did right out of here. And I gave the little chunk of code to the DRE who was managing the website right now so she could put it in here. She already has the code for next Sunday and she'll change it out on Saturday. So people can, watch live, of course, but then the replay as they need to.
Yeah.
So on our actual live page, we use Vimeo. Most parishes won't be able to do that because we pay a significant amount of money to be able to live stream through Vimeo to multiple places.
Yeah.
But you can still do things with embedding, even if you're using Facebook. There's something called Facebook for Developers. Yeah. And if you just Google Facebook developers embed video, it shows you how to get the video feed if you're using Facebook so that you can put it on your homepage.
Okay.
So you're not stuck with only using social media. You can use the nice tools they've made to encourage social media addiction to also get so people who are not on Facebook and struggle with that can see it.
Because it's important that everybody in our parish can access it without having to jump through some hoops of a particular platform.
Yes.
As far as hosting, I know, you've talked about how great Vimeo is, but, for those of us who don't want to spend that subscription, what would be your recommendation for where to host it? I think the first two places most of us would think of would be Facebook and YouTube.
Yes. Facebook is probably where most parishes already have a presence.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very simple to use for starting a video.
Mm-hmm.
So Facebook first, I've got up. And to start a live video, like I'm on our page, I am going to say this is a test video. Sorry, there's us live right now. After I start this, it will ask me, I'm sorry, actually, I lied. I got to say from here, create live. That's what it happens when you're on your phone. You have to start the post, then add the live video. So I can create a live feed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, leave site. I don't need that thing. Then I'm assuming people don't have, if they're watching this video, they don't have professional software to send feed from a camera.
Right.
So you're going to be using what you have hooked up. Go live now. You're going to select your video to be your webcam, your audio to be your input, and you go live. I recommend against scheduling live videos because we make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
So when you schedule a live video, it will automatically start going live at the time of the event. And you still may have a cable not hooked up right.
Yeah.
Or if you are ready to go before Mass, start 5 minutes before. Just so people can get into the presence of the space.
Right.
So I advise against that. But yeah, you share it to your page. It's very easy to start. And there's 1,000,001 videos on how to do that. YouTube is also very simple. You add a video, go live, and it walks you through the same setup. If people, so you go to streamer, like webcam, and it'll activate our webcam.
Right.
So they're pretty straightforward. The most important thing that you need to check, other than, you can Google a video and stream to Facebook.
Right.
Make sure on your settings, on your device that you're using, your system preferences, that you have the right audio and video inputs. So if you are hooking up your microphone and your soundboard, that it's using that as the input, not your built-in microphone.
Yes.
Because you may have done everything right setting it up, but it's still using that built-in mic instead of your nice equipment. And from a phone, like I have installed Facebook Pages. I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing this from a phone, install the app for what you're going to be using. Facebook Pages is different than just regular Facebook. It's meant for page management.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where if I publish something, then you would add to your post a live video.
Right.
The other tip I want to give parishes right now is, once you have done this, and this is something that is just kind of like it's a marketing thing, but really you're trying to engage your parishioners and keep everyone connected. So let me get out of this live. This is a really simple thing to do. When people have watched your videos and you want to make sure that they can see them in the future, let me go to our posts. Come on. There we go. I can look at this little like button, and if people have liked the video and I click on this, see there are 2 people who have liked the video that we are doing right now, who right now are going to receive an invitation to like cmax.tv.
Yeah.
So doing that is a really simple way to make sure that you stay connected with your parishioners and the people who are watching what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I'm leaning toward recommending Facebook, because parishes probably have the presence already.
Yes.
And it is pretty similar in ease to use to YouTube, and they're both free for basic getting started. So in a nutshell, look for cables, close your doors, turn off your air conditioner and your holy water font, stay focused on the liturgy.
Yeah.
Do you have any other closing thoughts?
I think that really covers it. You made a great point earlier about how as Catholics, because our faith is so sacramental, that we might be a little behind the curve compared to some of our, friends and family who are working out of a church that's maybe a Pentecostal church or an evangelical church. A lot of their stuff might already be online, but we don't do sacraments except for in person. Even confession, which would be easy to do over the phone, it has to be done in person. So much of our faith is really built around that daily practice of being there. So this is, it does represent, I think, just a unique challenge for us as Catholics, both to catch up in terms of how can we help our people to feel connected to our church and to their faith, and both technologically, but also to help people to engage in some spiritual practices they may not be used to, because we're so communal. To help them to realize that even when we can't physically come to church and we're not able to physically receive Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, that God is still there with us, and, how to continue to grow their faith in their relationship with God.
And these tools can help.
Yes, indeed.
And on that note of tools, so at CMAX TV, we have been crazy busy trying to live stream from Mass with Father Dan at 8 a.m. And then we've been doing interviews with him and check-ins. He and I actually were in parallel youth groups growing up, and his old youth minister is now our chief operating officer and is monitoring the stream right now. So it's cool to see how these relationships have continued. Yeah. And through this time, we can reach out with relationships. So we've got daily Mass going on. My pastor is coming here on Sundays to celebrate Mass at 11 this week. And we've been doing interviews. I mean, right now, Deacon Daryl is over at our editor, David Mims' house, and they're interviewing people from the relationships Deacon Daryl has all over the globe that we'll be posting. But it's, in a way, this is an excuse to connect with people you might not normally connect with.
Yes.
So we can use those opportunities and then use the tools we have. Normally this room is not for Mass and live streaming to this extent, but we're all using the tools we have to be able to build the greater community to the glory of God.
Indeed. I think it's also worth mentioning, you were talking about, what your pastor is doing coming here, working with Father Dan. I know our priest has been awesome. I think our clergy really deserve some recognition for jumping into this new challenge so wholeheartedly and so quickly. All of the priests that I know seem, even though it's a challenge and it's not what they would be normally doing in their day to day, they're just picking it up so quickly and working so hard for all of us, who are their sheep.
Absolutely. So thank you to our clergy. And I think that's a good wrap-up point. And thank you to our parishioners and music ministers and youth ministers and anybody who knows how to use an iPhone who is helping in this current time.
Yeah.
God bless.